The Accuser. Years passed by after the flood, and it was the same old story. Most people were following Satan's way because it seemed easier. Among the few on God's side was a very rich man named Job. It was time for another meeting of angels and representatives before God, and here came Satan, important, so important as you please, claiming to be the ruler of the earth. God looked at him. Have you noticed that man Job? You claim to rule the earth, but he faithfully serves me. Of course, retorted Satan. Why shouldn't he? You've protected him from any kind of trouble, and he has everything he wants. Just take all his riches away and see what happens. Why, he'll curse you to your face. Very well, said God. We will test him out. Do anything you want, but do not touch Job himself. We shall see what happens. Then God turned to the guardian angels. Don't protect anything that belongs to Job until I give you further orders. Satan could hardly wait to get at Job. He brought on storms, accidents, every imaginable kind of calamity, until his crops were destroyed. His animals were all killed or stolen, and every one of his children were killed. Poor Job. He couldn't imagine why God suddenly let these terrible things happen to him when he served God with all his heart. He had been the wealthiest man in the whole world, the whole country. It was that world. And now all at once he was poor as a beggar. He didn't mind so much losing his riches, but oh, his precious children, every one of them dead. Now what would Job do? Angels, both the good and the bad, were watching to see. They saw him bow down to worship. They heard him say that God had given him all these blessings, so God had a right to take them away. On hearing Job's words, the messenger angels gave a shout of joy and hurried to heaven to tell the good news. All heaven sang with gladness to hear how Job had stood the test. Satan must have felt a little crestfallen, but he put on a bold front and showed up at the next meeting. Again, God looked at him. Have you noticed that man Job? How he remained faithful to me in spite of the cruel things I allowed you to do to him? Naturally, sneered Satan. Since you saved his own skin, just let me get to him. You'll see, it'll be a different story. Very well, God agreed once more. Just so you don't kill him. And again the guardian angels were told not to interfere. Now, in addition to all his other troubles, Satan brought upon Job the very worst sickness he could invent. Job suffered so much that he wished he had never been born. When his friends came to see him, they were so shocked at his condition that for some time they couldn't even speak. Job, one said at last, you must have committed a very wicked sin for God to punish you so terribly. The other friends all agreed. It wounded Job's heart. In fact, it pained him even more than his sickness to have his friends think evil of him. Finally, even his wife's patience broke down. Job, you mean to tell me you are still loyal? All your life you've served God faithfully, and this is how he rewards you. Why don't you just curse God so that he will destroy you quickly and have your misery over with? Why, that is foolish talk, replied Job. Are we to be faithful to God only when things are going good and turn against him when they go bad? Again the watching angels shouted for joy, for Job had stood the test. The guardian angels were sent back to protect him. Before long he was a wealthy man again, and God gave him another fine family of children. Then there probably was another meeting before God, and let us suppose that this time Satan had pointed his accusing finger at someone else. Look at your friend Abraham, he taunted. He has made many mistakes, yet you call him the father of the faithful. So God decided to try Abraham with the hardest test he ever gave any human being. He told him to offer his son Isaac as a sacrifice. Oh, no, not that. Why, that would be wicked, because besides, Isaac was to be the father of a great nation. Surely he must have misunderstood God. But no, God said that was exactly what he meant. Why? Why? But God gave no explanation. So Abraham took Isaac and started slowly up the hill. Oh, I can't, moaned his heart with every painful step. But his mind replied, I must obey, I must obey. I don't understand, but I will obey. Satan came close and tortured him with whispered doubts. Doesn't God command, thou shalt not kill? Doesn't God say it is wicked for the heathen to sacrifice their children? What will come of God's promise to make Isaac a great nation? All through the heavens, the angels were looking on, watching, hardly daring to breathe. They were amazed to see how Abraham was standing the test, and they were pleased. Now Abraham looked up and saw at the top of the mountain the cloud of God's presence. Then he knew for sure that this was real and not just a horrible dream. Suddenly it was as if a bright light shone in on his understanding. Why, yes, God had performed a miracle to give him Isaac, and God could perform another miracle and give him back from the dead. At the top of the mountain, they got everything ready. Then came the moment Abraham dreaded. He had to tell Isaac. Isaac was astonished and terrified. Oh, no, Father, no, God can't mean that. But when Abraham had quietly explained it all, Isaac said, I will obey, Father. I don't understand, but I will obey. Now they said their last prayers together before the sacrifice. They put their arms around each other and shed tears as they whispered goodbye. Then Abraham slowly raised his hand and, Stop, Abraham shouted in an angel voice, and an invisible hand held back his arm. Now I see that you will obey God, even to giving up your own son. All the angels of heaven and the watchers on the other worlds shouted a great shout of relief and joy. Abraham had won, and Satan was defeated. And as Abraham sacrificed the ram he found in a nearby bush, he said to himself, Now I know a little of how God must feel to sacrifice his only beloved son to die for us. As the angels were gathering for their worship before the throne, they must have talked about it in low tones. You know, said one, I've often wondered what it would be like for God to give his son to the world. When I watched Abraham's suffering today, it made me understand a little more how God must love his children. Margie was thinking hard. Aunt Trudy, if I should have a very hard trial, could it be that Satan is pointing his finger at me and God is testing me? Yes, it could be, for God is rather on the spot, as we say. First, he must prove that he is right and Satan is wrong. Next, the angels and other people must have a chance to see how Satan's way works out. And then each person must be tested to see which side he chooses to join. It's like being in a play at school, isn't it? Observed Dick. Exactly, Aunt Trudy agreed. The earth is the stage, and all we people are the actors. Angels and other worlds are in the audience. And oh, how intensely interested they are in watching how we act our parts, each one of us. When this part of the story was over, Margie and Dick were a long time in shifting their thoughts to other matters. Millions of unseen eyes were watching them, and that wasn't easy to dismiss from their minds.